Hey everybody, I'm Jason Mefford and I'm here with Brad Miller and we are walking a spiritual path with you today. And we're going to pick up kind of what we were talking about on the last episode around fear and being stuck or feeling some of these feelings or emotions that we may not want to feel and sometimes we get stuck in a little while. And so we talked a little bit before in the last episode. So if you didn't listen to that, go back and listen because Brad pretty much kind of gave a step by step on some of the process that he goes through. And we'll probably talk a little bit more about it in this episode too, as we kind of get into some other things kind of around this. So I know we kind of cut off the last episode because we didn't want it to be like an hour and a half. So here we go. But I know towards the end of last episode we were talking about the why, and I wanted to have a little bit more of a discussion on this. So Brad, maybe share again kind of what because I think a lot of times we get stuck into the, well, why is this happening to me? Why, right? And and I think there's a couple of different angles to go down here to try to understand. So maybe kind of explain
Mhm.
what you shared last episode too, because I think it's important for people, and then we'll kind of add on to that.
Yeah, so the last episode we talked a lot about kind of the feeling of the emotions, like how it's healthy to actually feel them and to have them, to experience them. That's part of being human. I mean, that's part of the reason why we come down to the planet to experience those emotions of being human, and we can't appreciate the positive ones without the negative ones, right? So we have to have both, but we don't want to get stuck into the negative ones for too long because that leads to bad things, disease, all that stuff. Um, so when we're processing these emotions, when we're trying to get through them, when we're trying to release them to let them go, one thing that we don't want to focus on is why we're feeling angry. If you're angry, you don't want to sit there and think, okay, now why is that I'm angry? Why am I so pissed off at the world? Like, what is it? Like, because that's not going to help you get beyond that, to move past that. That's going to keep you stuck in that emotion because your mind's going to be thinking about, okay, anger, anger, anger. What's making us anger, anger, anger? Who are we angry at? We're angry at this person, anger, anger, anger. How about this person? Anger, anger, anger. And it's going to keep us stuck in the anger. Our thinking is on the anger, our emotions are going to reflect the anger. So to get out of that, you don't stay thinking about the anger. You really think about, what do I want to feel instead?
Hmm.
And so that's why the why, when it comes to the why am I feeling, and again, anger is the one we're using. We'll probably focus a lot on this episode, but why we're feeling angry or fear isn't really important because that's just going to keep you in it. But the why does get important when it starts figuring out, how can I avoid getting into these deep funks in the first place? How do I avoid getting into the chasm of fear? Or do I avoid getting into this big ball of rage in the first place? That's where the why is important. And that's, I think, what we want to talk about here a lot in this episode.
Yeah, because I think, because like you said, the why does and it doesn't matter,
Mhm.
right? I mean, and I think it's beneficial in kind of going through a little bit of the exercise to understand what got you to a certain point, right? Because I know for me, as I've been much more aware of this, when I cross the Rubicon, it's never something that's a big deal that causes me to cross it, but it has been a lot of little things maybe over the day that I didn't stop the pattern. And so
Mhm.
I allowed things to build over the day. And so what seemed to be something rather benign and silly can put me over the edge. And so, the more I can understand that and be aware and catch it before it gets to that point, then I don't have kind of the meltdown.
Mhm.
And it's not necessarily that I have meltdowns, but I have explosions of energy. And for most people, if you would just look at me in a 3D space, you wouldn't think there's anything going on. But energetically, if you're someone who feels energy, you, like I said, looking at me, you won't see it. But if you can feel, it'll feel like a nuclear bomb just went off and destroyed everything around it. And so, I have to be careful that I don't get to that nuclear detonation phase if people around me are sensitive, right? Because that just scorched earth, for them. And so that why is important to kind of understand, to start seeing the patterns, to start being aware of the patterns, to be able to stop yourself and let go the little things before those little things become big things, right?
Mhm.
Is an important thing. I think too, it's like, a lot of times people get into the why me. So they're not just asking why to try to do a root cause analysis, but they're playing a pity party. Why me?
Victim and
Why
you're
me?
being a
Why
victim.
me? Why me? And being a victim. And you don't want to go there. That is not a place to go. So that's not really an appropriate use of why. If you want to go there, go there. Stay in your shit as long as you want to stay there. It's up to you. Make it as quick or as slow as you want it to be. But, the why me kind of thing is not what we're talking about. But I think what's interesting too is even when people try to say that, well, why me? Why am I feeling angry again? Well, because you didn't let it go. Well, but I did let it go. Well, you wouldn't be
Obviously,
feeling
you
it.
didn't.
You didn't let it all go. You probably let a part of it go, but you didn't let it all go. And because you didn't let it all go, it comes up. And so I'll tell you a story about that
Story
you may.
time. Yeah.
Story time from Jason. Okay. Oh my goodness. This has probably been 3 or 4 years ago now. I I made the mistake of going to the dermatologist, and this dermatologist was cut happy. Uh, okay. And so obviously there were some things on my back that they said, they do a little biopsy and whatever and say, oh, it's suspicious, so let's cut it out. So I've got a couple of big scars on my back from tissue that they took out. So when they do that, obviously, they cut pieces of my skin out, pull it back together, suture it up. You have to go back later and get the stitches taken out. So that happened. I mean, I've got scars on my back. You can see where it happened. Um, but literally years later, right? I'm in the bathroom. My partner comes up and is like, "Something up with your back." And she starts looking and starts kind of picking. Those people that like to come up and try to pop any blackhead or pimple that they
My
might
wife.
see, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I do.
And so all of a sudden, I'm sitting there brushing my teeth and she starts going in on my back. And she sees what appears to be like a blackhead or something, and she's trying to poke and nothing's really coming out, and she's going after it for a while and then has to finally kind of quit. Okay. Right. And then the next day or two, something like that, I was in there again brushing my teeth. And all of a sudden she comes over, she's like, aha, there was a suture that hadn't gotten removed that had been under my skin for years, a couple years at least. And it was a blue thread that, because she had kind of gone at it, it kind of re-agitated the skin around it. And so the skin said, oh, foreign object, let's get it out. And so it starts pushing it. And so sure enough, this little blue thread popped through that she could then take tweezers and pull out. And it was, I mean, it was not huge, but it was still,
Mhm. Sure.
pretty long to go, huh, that's been in my back for 2 years and I didn't realize it. Well, that's the same thing that happens with our feelings and our emotions. I'm sure the doctor, the PA that took him out, felt like she had gotten everything, and I thought she had gotten everything. but there was something left over. So why did that happen? Because all the sutures had not been let go. So why do we continue to get into anger about certain things? Why do I continue to be annoyed with certain things? Because I haven't let it go completely. I've let part of it go, but I haven't let all of it go because that's why it keeps coming up. If I had truly let it all completely go, then it wouldn't affect me at all going forward. And so to me, I think, sometimes too, it's like, well, why is this happening? Well, sometimes it's because you haven't let it all go. Another reason on why it happens is sometimes it's beings and them that are helping us have experiences to make us go through it.
Very cryptic.
Very cryptic, right? Very cryptic. So, shall I explain?
Please.
For those of you that have been listening for a while, you know that weird things happen in my life. I meet very interesting people all the time, some of whom are people, some of whom are not people, but they look
We have
like people.
we have mentioned not people before a little bit. Yeah.
People are not people. Okay. And again, if maybe we'll get into that different time. But I have things that happen to me all the time that are a little bit different than maybe what most people have experienced, or maybe when you're experiencing things like this, you don't see them as synchronistic like I do. But I will have certain times like, out walking the dog. Usually I wear longer pants, longer stretchy pants, around the house, but I happen to be wearing shorts one day. And so I taken the dog out on the, to do his business. And sure enough, it's not him necessarily that pulls, but all of a sudden, as I'm walking along, one of my legs, it's like somebody tripped me, and I went down, scraped my knee. It wasn't me being clumsy. It wasn't me tripping over something, but someone tripped me. This has happened before. I've been walking down the hallway, and all of a sudden I trip and fall into the wall. Ha ha ha. Somebody's laughing about what they just did to Jason. Now, why would things like that happen to me? Because a lot of times it's an opportunity for me to get out of my shit. It's an opportunity for me to let something go. And so it's beings on the other side in other dimensions who are helping me, right, get through some of these things. And so again, you might be saying, well, this is kind of weird. Well, again, Jason's story time, right?
Mm-hmm.
I told you that, annoyance, is one of the things that I'm working on. And it's annoyance when things don't go the way I was planning, because I'm a good planner, I'm a good provider. I think things out. I have a plan. I have a backup plan. All these different things, right, to try to help make sure that things go the way I want them to, because I want to control them. Ooh, y'all heard that, right? Yeah, which
Mm-hmm.
I'm not supposed to be that way. I shouldn't be that way. So I get reminders along the way about how little control I actually have, even though I like to think I have control. And so, as an example, I told you out on a trip the last couple of weeks, driving all over the country, several thousand miles. So, which one to start with, right? So, uh, each night, because have an RV that we drive around, so can kind of stop when we feel like we need to. Find a rest area, big parking lot, right? But because the RV, it's a smaller one, but we still have to kind of park with the bigger trucks, right? When we go to rest areas. So We get into one, we find the farthest corner away from the parking, the freeway, kind of quiet, right next to nature on the edge. I think this is going to be perfect. Nobody else is around us. The lines, where the trucks are supposed to park, there's plenty of movement so they can like turn and go and no issue. So we find a place, stop, have our dinner, getting ready to go to bed, and put up the shades, right? So we don't really see anything outside. Just about ready to go to bed, and all of a sudden, huge commotion, noise outside. And, we're sitting there, a lot of noise kind of going on, which is a little weird, but whatever. It felt like we were by ourselves. And we're sitting there, and all of a sudden, it got really loud and cold. And we're like, what just happened? And I get up, both front windows, car was turned off. We were in the back. No window remote on the remote in my car, in my pocket. All of a sudden, both car windows in the front go at the same time. A little annoying. Like, what just happened? So I get up to go outside and check what happened. Sure enough, that's what happened. I put the windows back up and I walk outside to being completely surrounded by tractor trailers. And in fact, there was one that there was just no parking sign all along this side where we were at. We were like at the end of where you could park, and the whole other side here was no parking. I get out, the whole thing is lined up. There's an active one that's right next to us, and he gets out, kind of kicks his tires a little bit, gets back in, and he starts, he had 20, 30 feet away from us, right? Looked like he was parked in, he was straight where he needed to go. All of a sudden, he gets in the cab, cranks it into reverse, and like floors it back to us, literally coming within 2 feet of smashing into us. Why? Well, those were nice little exercises for Jason to practice not being annoyed. Did I do them? No. Why did they happen? Because they were lessons for Jason to control myself, to not be annoyed, right? To realize that I'm protected. Do you know how many times I've had cars or other things literally come within inches of me, and it's like they bounce off this bubble. And that's
At
kind of
least
what
twice you've told us. So
that's kind of what happened, this other night with this huge tractor trailer speeding back into us in reverse, and all of a sudden 2 feet stops and pulls back. I don't even know what he was doing. He was already straight. He wasn't really getting any further over, right? So again, it's like these are synchronistic events, things that are going on that have meaning for me, that are teaching me things, right? And so I think for me too, and there were just example after example after example after example on this trip, and I had to let a lot go on this trip, right? And I'm getting better. It's still taking me a little bit, but I'm getting better, right? Of sometimes these things happen for our benefit, right? And I think that's where a lot of times, until we can start to see them that way and see them as blessings instead of challenges, and not necessarily welcome them, because again, it's like a lot of times these things aren't fun to go through,
mhm.
but they're usually harmless, right? The things like that I explained are not things that really physically hurt me. Okay, my knee got scraped, big deal, right? Or little things like this that just happen. I think I told you too. I mean, the ring that I wear all the time for 2, 3 years now. All of a sudden, one day, it gets agitated like I got fried. And I could take my ring off. I could see the redness underneath my ring, just where it was. There's no 3D explanation for that because nothing happened any different. Wasn't washing my hands any different. Wearing the same ring for the whole time. No
Mm.
new detergents, soaps, oils, anything else to do it. It just happened.
Mm.
For what purpose? The why sometimes doesn't matter, like you said. Doesn't matter. But it caused me to have awareness,
Mhm.
which is a good thing.
Yeah. I
So
like to say
I,
that aware everything starts with awareness,
yeah.
right? Like, you know, so I don't have any fun stories like that that come to mind, unfortunately. Or fortunately, maybe. I mean,
Oh,
depends how you want to see it.
I'm sure you do, Brad. I mean, because this is the thing, and um, I've just become more aware of it. I
Hmm.
think almost everyone, there are a lot more things that are going on if you just are more aware of it, and you start to see the things, for what it is.
Hmm.
Um, that I think they're happening all the time. It's not me. I'm not special. I think I'm just becoming more aware of when they're happening and why they're happening,
Hmm.
and it's kind of like, oh yeah, that was a good one. Rolling down the windows, that was classic. That was
They
good.
had to get your attention somehow.
They
That's
had
how
to
they
get
get you
my
out of the car.
attention, and so
That's how
it's
they
like,
got you out.
whoa, oh, that was pretty classic. Yeah, that's a good one.
I mean, they
That's
could
a,
have set
that's a
the
that's a nice touch.
they could have set the engine on fire. So I mean, it could have been
Uh,
worse,
no,
right?
and that's the thing is it's like, I mean, I hope again, my intention is that I don't need things like that, big things like that happening. That the more I'm aware, the more I'm grateful, the more I kind of acknowledge, the more I let go, the more I do those things. It doesn't have to be a two before to the head. The two before only comes if we're not paying attention to the other taps because they don't use the two before unless you're not listening. And it's really important,
Mhm.
and if that's the case, then you haven't been putting your awareness where it needs to be necessarily, your attention.
Mhm.
Um, and so again, like I said, I know probably some of the things that happen to me are weird and different and probably don't happen to most other people. But I think a lot of even these little things like I shared today are things that probably do happen to more people. We just shrug it off to, oh, well, that's a coincidence,
Mhm.
or we just kind of ignore it instead of stopping and seeing maybe what the bigger thing is behind it,
Mhm.
because there really aren't coincidences. It's not a
Right.
coincidence. Most of life is not a coincidence. If you
Mhm.
choose to see it that way, okay, then I guess it's a coincidence to you, but most of the time it's actually synchronistic, uh, universe speaking to you,
Hmm.
sort of things.
Yeah. Well, and it could be just that I mean, and I think this is a really important, and I know you like to tie things back to the kind of spirituality and spiritual path. I think as you go along the spiritual path, you start becoming more aware of these things. This is one of the benefits of this path is that you start to become more present in what's going on. You start noticing things, becoming aware of what's going on around you, and not just shrugging them off as, oh, well, that's just whatever. Like that's just a coincidence. You start saying, well, that's interesting. What's up with that? Like, why did that happen? Like, there's something there. I okay. So yesterday I went to hiking and I was sitting there and thinking, trying to kind of clear my head and had some thoughts going through, trying to get some hits of some things, and all of a sudden, they're like, as soon as something popped into my head, there was a brisk blow of wind. I mean, it had been just a little bit of wind, but nothing too crazy. But all of a sudden, it's a just strong gust of wind hit, and I got shivers just after I had this particular thing in my head. And I think most of the time we just kind of shrug it off as like, oh, well, just the wind kicking up and maybe put my jacket on or, don't think about it. But I realized that something came into my head at one point, and as soon as that went in that head, this happened. Not just a coincidence. Like there's something there.
No, and a lot of
And
times when those things happen, it's a confirmation.
yep,
It's a
exactly.
confirmation. A thought comes in, something else happens, you get a confirmation, with
Hmm.
that. And a lot of times, like it's as simple as maybe the wind blowing, feeling the shivers, other things that happen because it's different for each person on what you may feel in your body or what may be
Hmm.
going on around you. But especially when there's things that are unusual, let's say. Like you said, the breeze was just blowing a little bit. All of a sudden, for there to be this big gust and then nothing, that's just not
Hmm.
normal. And so it's something to pay attention to.
Yeah. And I also think, you talked about how you have these strange things coming to you, and most of us can't say that we've had the windows of our car roll down and the car come within 2 feet of us. I think some of it is that the further you go down the spiritual path, the more you are willing to or prepared or in the right, I don't want to say mindset, but you're in the right space to be able to release some of these things that you're holding back. And so the universe, I think, does come back with these opportunities to allow you to release those because you have shown your willingness to do so. You're open to that. Whereas if you're like, I'm going to hold on to this anger and I'm not going to let it go and I'm going to take it in my grave, like, okay, then you're not really open to releasing it. So, putting the windows down, like, that's not going to do anything for you. But because you're working on things like that, on working on releasing, I think they come more to you because the universe says, hey, he's paying attention. He's working on these things. Let's help him get rid of this stuff that he doesn't need.
Well, and I think you're absolutely right. I think it happens more frequently, and when you're open, when you're willing, when you're paying attention, when you're doing the work, it happens more frequently.
Hmm.
It happens more often, and often it's a catalyst. So, one thing that my mentor Don Javier that I work with, so I haven't said that publicly, but he says that he's a catalyst. And at first, when I kind of heard him say that, it seemed a little interesting. But I think it kind of goes along with what you're talking about here, which is when we're willing, when we're ready, when we're doing the work, the universe, the beings, they, mentors, guides, whatever it is, are gonna ramp it up a little bit. They're gonna they're gonna give it to you a little bit more, right? Because you're ready, they're trying to help you get through the change quicker. And so they'll give you opportunities faster and quicker
Hmm.
to go through it. Now,
When the
again,
student is ready, the teacher will appear.
exactly, right? And the more that you go through it like that, the quicker it comes. And like I said, hopefully it doesn't have to be the two before.
Hmm.
Because at least in my life, it's my intention to pay attention and and follow the guidance that I'm given as soon as I can, because I don't want it to be a two before, right? When somebody's like tapping me on the shoulder, Jason, it's like I might not get it the first time, But the second or third time, when I have a confirmation or things just kind of
A
show
little
up,
shove
because
there just to kind of,
yeah,
hey.
because well, we've talked about that before too, right? Where it's like sometimes something will come in and it's like, well, that's weird. I wasn't even thinking about that. What? Right? And then maybe the gust of wind comes along, or a week later you have something in your email or you see something on your social media feed, and it's like, well, hold it, didn't I just get told something like that last week? Right? And so you start putting the pieces together at that point and start to realize kind of what's coming through. And I think just the more you do it, the more you get used to it, the quicker I think
Mhm.
we actually become aware of what it is. And like you said, hope that is usually not the two before. It's something little um, that helps us get out. But again, it's like, why are we talking about this? Because we were talking about fear and getting stuck in the feelings and emotions before too, right? And it's like a lot of times these are things to help encourage us or give us a little nudge to get us through it. And again, it's like, with athletics too, athletic coaching, it's like, go run a lap. Okay. Now go run another lap. Okay. Another one, right? Again. And you feel like you're exhausted and you can't do it again. And what does the coach say? Again, 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 right? Until you feel like you're going to collapse. And sometimes you do. But it's kind of that same way when it comes to spirituality too. The more willing you are, the more ready you are, the teacher shows up. And they're usually gentle. It depends on who they are. Uh, some of them, some of them have a sense of humor, and I can always tell when there's certain beings behind probably some of the stuff because they like to have fun with me. Okay, right? That's just the way they are. That's their art. That's how they work. Um, and it's okay. But so I don't know. We kind of went down the rabbit hole. How do we pull this back? Or is this what we were, you know?
No, I mean, I think there's, I don't want this to go too awful long. I think there's different ways we could keep going. But
Yeah, I
I don't
think
want to
we've,
make this too awful long for people. I think it just kind of comes back to why. And, if our goal is to learn, if our goal is to grow, is to progress down the spiritual path, then we need to be aware. We need to be thinking about the whys. Because, I mean, we talked about the lessons that you learn through events and things that may happen to you, but that also is how we avoid some of these emotions, some of these feelings that get us trapped and get us stuck. Because if you are in your, let's say you were in anger, I guarantee you would not have got that message in a car in that truck. If you were up there, flipping the truck driver off, giving the bird, yelling at him, cussing him out, you would not have understood and not been able to get that message to you, that lesson. You would not been able to release some of the things that you needed to release, to heal some things you needed to heal, because you'd be in that negativity, that low vibrational state, those emotions. And so it's really important to be able to get down that path, to be able to hit those emotions, those negative stuff at the path, like get them before they get you, so that you can minimize them, so you can focus on the positive, on the higher frequency vibrations, because that will allow you to pick up on things, that will allow you to be more aware, to learn the
Mhm.
lessons, to understand the lessons. I mean, it's not just to actually have the lesson, to experience the situation, but to actually understand what it was trying to teach you. And it may not be 3D logical understanding. It may be something that has to happen more subconsciously. But you can't do that if you're so bundled up in those negative fears and, anxieties and stuff like that. And so I think it's all really, important to get the why for that. Don't get stuck in the why if you're trying to get through the emotion in the first place, because that'll just keep you trapped in it. But when you can become from a place of reflection, where you can kind of step back a moment and kind of look at things from a perspective, that's when you can kind of take, okay, why is this? What is this trying to teach me? Why is this something that keeps on happening? How can I take this and learn from it? How can I use this to help me grow, to move toward down this path, the spiritual path that we're kind of here to take, that we're talking about? Because everything happens for a reason.
Mhm.
We talk about, there's the universal law of cause and effect. There's a cause and an effect for everything. Everything that happens, there's a reason. It may be something that we can't see, but it's there. And there's a benefit to everything that happens to us as well. And I think we maybe talked a little bit about that before, and maybe we'll talk more about that another time. But um,
Yeah, well, and I think, it's because we were talking about feelings and emotions, and it's like, can we start to do things from a different frequency and vibration standpoint
mhm,
than what our patterns have been? So
mhm,
like that with I was actually sitting outside right next to it, in a chair when he started doing this, and I just stood up and waved my hands and went, "Hey," and he stopped 2 feet and then went forward. Right. In the past, I would have been pissed. I probably would have gone up and like laid into this guy, right?
mhm,
I would have gotten into anger, uh, might have gotten into a little physical altercation, with this person. In the past, that's how I might have done it, right? But like I said, as I've continued to try to let go, let in, let go, let in, let go, let in,
mhm,
instead, I obviously do that from a protection standpoint, sort of a thing, and standing my ground, literally standing my ground and not moving and waving my hands and energetically stopping is something to the whole thing as well. But, then for me to stop and go, well, isn't that interesting? Nice one. Nice one. Right.
mhm,
Realizing that I have a choice in how I choose to respond. And so instead of choosing to go down anger, it was whoa, did that just happen? Nice one. Sort of a
mhm,
thing. And realize and kind of pat myself on the back a little bit for not jumping into the anger automatically. And instead to say, I'm grateful to be protected, right? I'm
mhm,
grateful for that lesson that allowed me to practice not being annoyed, not being in anger, right? It's a different experience. And I think that's part of this whole thing is as we're evolving, as we're growing, we start to have experiences in a different way because we're
mhm.
approaching them from a different frequency and vibration than we were
Yeah.
before. And when we
Yep.
start doing that, like you said, when you're doing this with your daughter and you're tickling her and doing all this stuff, you were annoyed or angry to begin with, but as you've practiced it, it's gotten better over time, right? And so
Mm,
again, it's like sometimes we need to stop and pat ourselves on the back or give ourselves a hug. It's like I'm making progress. I'm getting better,
mhm.
sort of a thing, because that's what we're doing. So
Yeah. I got better.
like
That's
my
right.
bedtime. Yeah, she turned me into a newt.
I got better. That's right. Well, and with that reference, I think this is a good place to wrap it up for today. Like I said, I know there's a lot more we can go with this, but we've talked a lot, and a lot, I think, for people to sit with. So um I think that wraps her up for today. Hopefully everybody um took something out of this for today.
Mhm.
Um, and
Yeah, there's a lot in it.
yeah.
And again, just take it, don't take it, it's up to you. But, if you want to
Mhm.
start seeing things different, responding with a different level of vibration and frequency to even what seems to be normal, mundane things. I keep telling myself everything I do, say, think, say, and do is with love. Everything I
Mhm.
think, say, and do is with love, right? For me to try to again remind myself, have that attention and the awareness that everything I do, whether it's washing dishes, whether it's, driving on the highway, whatever it happens to be, that I'm doing more and more of everything I do from a higher frequency and vibration. And that's the point, right? If you're starting in shame, you're starting in fear, just move up a step or two. Just get a
Mhm.
little bit better. And because we can all do it. I'm doing it. Brad's doing it. Other people are doing it. You can do it if you want to as well.
Yep.
So, with that, go out and have a great week. And we will see you on our next episode. So much love and blessings to you. And we'll see you on the next episode.
See you guys then.